Good evening. In this video, I want to again address another lie that James Waite tells in his book, King James Only Controversy. In this case, he accuses D.A. Waite of being inaccurate. He says in a footnote, he says here that Waite alleged inaccurate that before being found, Aleph was about to be burned. One would note that the steward of St. Catherine's kept the manuscript in the cell wrapped in a red cloth, hardly the way one treats trash. Now, the facts are that when Tishendorf went to the monastery, he found them burning scraps of paper, which was part of that manuscript, part of SINAITIC's manuscript. And the fact that when Tishendorf stopped them from burning those pieces, the scraps, and said stop doing it, these monks pulled it back, and that's when they came forward. When Tishendorf came and showed him his what he reproduced from the copies that he had taken from the monastery, and they say, oh yeah, we had the same thing, and he recognized the fragments that he had saved from the fire. So the things that they were being burned in the fire was from the SINAITIC's manuscript. So the idea that certainly they weren't burning it because they now had this they came out to roll, that was later. So he doesn't tell you this is how they do it. This is how these guys, these liars operate. They leave out important details, connections that you need to see the truth. And he just got that from Metzer. He's not smart enough to do this. He's got that from Metzer. Metzer leaves out that connection and tries to sneak it in that the SINAITIC wasn't being burned, when in fact that's exactly what was happening. He says on page 56, while visiting St. Catherine's Monastery in Mount Sinai, he noticed some parchment scraps in a basket that was being used to stoke the fire in the monastery's oven. Upon examining them, he discovered they contained part of the Septuagint, a Greek translation of the Old Testament. Yeah, and they came from SINAITIC's manuscript. This is exactly what he was looking for, so he asked if he could take the scraps to his room for further examination, warning the monks not to be burning such items. His obvious excitement worried them, and they became less than cooperative in providing additional information about manuscripts at the monastery. He also told them to stop burning those manuscripts, those fragments. Years passed. Tishendorf tried to find more manuscripts at the monastery in 1853, but to no avail. 6 years later, he visited again, and this time at the very evening before he was to leave, he presented a copy of the Septuagint, which he had published, or certain books and parts of the Septuagint, to the steward. Upon looking at Tishendorf's gifts, the steward remarked that he too had a copy of the Septuagint. From the closet, the cellar, he produced a manuscript wrapped in a red cloth. The monk had no idea of the treasure he held in his hands, for it was none other than Codex Sinaiticus, which at that time was at least 1,500 years old. So what they leave out is what Tishendorf writes here, and I can pull this up. This is his own recounting of it. I unrolled the cover and discovered to my great surprise not only the very fragments which 15 years before I had taken out of the basket. These are the fragments he took out of the basket, which stopped them from being burned. That's what was being burned. So the idea that now that they weren't burning SINAITICus, I mean that they came out with that well protected roll. That was after the fact. Before that, they were burning it. So this is how they lie. And when you bring the truth up, that was being burned in these baskets, they'll come out. Metzer will print it, and then Waite will just repeat the lie, and that's how these lies continue. You go back to the original source and find out exactly what was happening here, and you'll see what Tishendorf himself said. The fragments that he saw, he recognized in that roll, which was SINAITICus, he recognized it. But also other parts of the Old Testament, the New Testament complete. In addition, the Epistle of Barnabas, and the pastor, a part of the Pastor of Hermas. Both of these are apocryphal books. And he spent all night reading. What he spent all night translating wasn't the New Testament. He spent all night translating the Epistle of Barnabas, an apocryphal book, which is not part of the New Testament. That's why he was so excited about it. He wanted to translate that book. But this is how the lies are done, cleverly by leaving out the facts. So, in fact, the reality is that SINAITIC was being burned. The parts of the Old Testament that Tishendorf found out was from that manuscript. Then he goes, so they try to make it like, these, we don't know what we're talking about. When in fact, they're just leaving out the facts, and they're very clever in doing so. He says here now, again, going back to the footnote dealing with Dr. Waite, he says they just about worship that manuscript. Again, that's dealing with, it wasn't SINAITIC, he's talking about Westcott and Hort, and they do. They held that as being the primary manuscript. And even Allen admitted that in his introduction to the New Testament in the Nestle Allen. Then he says here, okay, when Dr. Waite debated me in August 1994, he dropped the just about and directly asserted that Westcott and Hort worship SINAITIC. I doubt very much he said they worship SINAITIC because he was talking about Vaticanus. Tishendorf worshipped SINAITIC. He held that to be the primary manuscript, and of course, when they disagreed about 3,000 places, that's where they would hold one to be over the other one. When they agreed, Westcott and Hort believed that it was virtually the actual original writing. So it was very hard to go against both Aleph and B when they agreed with each other. But again, this is another sign of a lie told in a work that's praised by all these guys back here: Packer, Carson, Hengelgraft, MacArthur. Wonderful work here. It's a bunch of garbage. He lied. They leave out the facts. This is from Metzer. He leaves out the little detail that those fragments that were being burned in the Old Testament, that Tishendorf admitting, recognizing when he got the roll from SINAITIC, when he saw 15 years later, he saw those fragments show up in that roll. So again, this is how it's done, omitting details, omitting facts when it's convenient to do so, in order to cause confusion, and then assert that the guys defending the King James Bible and telling the truth are the ones inaccurate. The fact is that the SINAITIC was being burned. The Old Testament, that's what the Tishendorf found out. He stopped them from burning it. The monks found out that it was valuable. They put it together, and so 15 years later, when Tishendorf came back, those parts, the pieces that had been in the trash can about to be burned, were now part of that manuscript and had been preserved rather than be burned, which is very unfortunate. They should have been burned, but that's another issue, because essentially it's just useless. The garbage pails where they belong. But that's the facts. Those are the facts, and you won't get facts. You'll get selective facts from works like this, and that's, you want to check it. Check Tishendorf's very work here. Pull it up, and you'll see exactly what I quoted from here. That when he found the manuscripts, he noticed that the roll, that those are the very fragments that he had saved from being burned. So Waite just repeats a lie that he heard from Metzer, and this is in order to preserve the dignity of SINAITIC, which is in fact which had 2 apocryphal books in the New Testament, and of course had the apocryphal books in the Old Testament along with the Septuagint, and that's what these guys consider a great manuscript. Amen. Thank you.